Out here.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, the whole mind, this isn't a man.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it, that was in midair going across the road in front of me.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail. And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right outside of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
There are thousands of perfect people whose word would be good on any other subject who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal. And that is a fact.
And good evening, cyberspace, to Squatch-D TV for today's date, February 16th, 2020. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with, well, he's going to be way down here on that list, way down on the bottom. We got the regular friggin' Brady Bunch going tonight.
Hey, guys.
Can I be Alice?
You can. And
Please.
Chris, you can be Sam. But he didn't get a square. So anyway, hello to everybody. And we're finally on. We had a little bit of some technical difficulty. We had to do a readjustment of things. So that's why we're running a tad bit late tonight. So just for folks who know that we will not be able to narrate videos now and talk about videos as we play them, because all of a sudden we have this echo problem when the main board is unmuted. But anyway.
That's okay, man.
Yeah. So, Chris, I don't know about you, but I'm freezing my berries off here the last couple of days.
Oh, we've had some really nice weather. I mean, it's really warm out right now. I'm thinking about maybe opening up a window here, you know.
Well, I'm trying to think. Oh, we're at a balmy 32 degrees here. Hey, it's the first time it's been. Well, 2 nights ago it was -4.
Yeah.
And on Whiteface Mountain it was -114 degrees.
No.
That's at the top of Whiteface Mountain. That is cold.
I can't stand that. No.
So let's say hello to the gang. We got John there. Hello, John.
Hey, John.
Hey, Cryptidville. What's going on?
Cryptidville.
Michael, how are you tonight?
Tack.
Got Rod. Welcome, Rod, from YouTube.
Yeah, welcome,
Rod. Olive Barnes. How you doing? And we got Sassy Squatch Girl. And we got Suzanne Jack. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
Oh, she's sending us a Valentine's Day card on the
way.
And of course we got Nani. Hello, Nani.
Nani.
Cindy, hello.
Hi, Cindy.
Walt tonight. Is little Walt with Walt tonight? Now that's
little big Walt and little Walt.
Yeah, if little Walt's out there, hello, little Walt.
If you're there.
Tambourine, hello, how are you?
Tambourine, hey.
Well, as you can see, we have a distinguished panel with us tonight. Of course, the
I don't know about that, Steve.
The gentleman.
I was going to say that Steve and I are kind of like the other reality of Kirk and Spock for you and Chris.
Here's the funny part. Before you introduce us, there's Steve Kulls, Chris York, Steve Alcorn, Chris Bennett. So there's like 2 Steves and 2 Chris's. It's like crazy.
It's Steve squared and Chris squared.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you know, we have it alternating. We have Steve, Chris. So we're good.
Good shit.
It works.
I'll just call you Kulls and Alcorn tonight.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call Bennett.
That'll work.
And of course, we got Jimmy Trick in the door, Mr. Charlie Wonton himself.
Jimmy.
So, we tonight are going to talk about a gentleman and we kind of have the residential. Yes,
Justin.
we're gonna talk about Mr. Smeja tonight
Mm-hmm.
and the Bigfoot tube steak. I was gonna say, but
You're on the wrong show, Steve.
that's
That's our show.
couple more shout outs. We have Aaron. Hello, Aaron, and Will.
Hey, Aaron. Will.
Thanks, guys, for showing up tonight. I see the YouTube community is out in force tonight. Welcome all. And if you're I don't know what's going on with this thing. So we just ask that our YouTubers, if you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up. If you don't like what you see, you can give us a thumbs down, although we tend to frown upon that. No, we don't care.
I specifically ask for it.
Well, it all helps with the algorithm.
It's all engagement.
So, yes. So I'm just looking at some of the old banners, but anyway, I'm going to get the banner off. That way we can see Mr. Bennett for a little while anyway.
Oh, I'm fine. The folks at home probably appreciate that anyway.
Okay. So let's,
right.
Who wants to start off with the Smeja mystery? I mean, I got you guys who covered it extensively. And we'll get to the polygraph a little later on. The polygraph is the most interesting component of that.
I know that Steve had interaction. Alcorn had way more interaction earlier on than I did with the whole Smeja controversy. I came in a little bit later, after everything was already going down, but before the documentary came out, which was done by Rosa Hebe.
Right.
So
I don't know if anybody, I don't know, Chris, have you seen the Rosa Hebe interview or the documentary?
The documentary?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I saw it. I've seen it twice.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett down there. Sorry. There we go.
Yeah, I think I've watched that. I believe I have.
Okay. So, all right. So let's start at the beginning. What is your impressions on the story, the documentary, the stuff? And Mr. York, you may go first, and Mr. Alcorn can chop in at any time he wants.
Okay, so I came into Bigfoot, the world of Bigfoot, I guess you could say, the online world, the community, whatever you want to call it, back in like 2012. And at that point in time, everything was kind of in the works, if I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Alcorn. And the documentary came out in 2000 and was it 14 or 13?
I can't remember the exact
I can't remember exactly when. So all this time we've been just hearing stories about this amazing story about this guy that shot an adult Bigfoot that ran away or whatever, and then shot this baby Bigfoot that died, supposedly rolled down to his feet. And, I was fascinated by the story. The people that seemed to be involved seemed to be legit to me at the time. And so I was just like, all right, I'll check this all out. And eventually I wound up going out to California and I met Justin. I actually had dinner with him twice. My first impressions of Justin Smeja was that he is a trickster, a prankster. Now, I didn't immediately say I think he hoaxed this or I think that this is some type of deception. But my immediate response to the man himself was, this guy likes to play pranks. I didn't see him as a bad person or anything like that, but I could definitely see him trying to pull one over on people.
Right. Yeah.
And I've been to the quote unquote kill site. I can tell you for a fact that the first thing I saw when I drove up in was a bear. My girlfriend and I at the time drove up into the campsite, and we were looking down onto it, and there was a bear walking around the campsite, came up over the ridge, saw us, and bolted off.
Okay.
So we drove down in, and we still hung out around there, you know, because we were pretty sure that we scared it off and it wasn't going to come, you know, it was really spooked. And I walked all around there. I walked where, you know, supposedly he had shot the juvenile.
Yeah.
Which is over off to the side of where you drive in. And yeah, I've been all over that area. My take on it at this point is that it's a bag of crap.
Right.
With everything that's come out since, all the facts that have been presented to me, some by Mr. Alcorn below me, and some by other people, I am firmly on the side of the fact that this is just a falsehood. It's not. I don't believe it's a true story by any stretch.
Right.
But that's my take on it.
And just so you know, we do have a comment from Rod in there that said he's actually met Justin, camped with him, and as infamous incident put aside, he's an all right character. And nobody's saying that he's a bad character here.
Yeah, no, Rod. I like I said, I met him. He seems like a very nice guy. Cooked me a nice rattlesnake up. I mean, I never had rattlesnake in my life. And he always seemed like a good guy. But he did come off like a prankster to me.
Yep.
Like a guy who liked to play tricks.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation actually just last week, Chris and Steve, Mr. Alcorn, about, you know, that even people that do hoaxes or whatever, if you want to characterize this as a hoax instead of a you know, a trick. I know you're skirting around the H word there.
No. I do think it's a hoax.
Right. But the fact is that doesn't necessarily mean the person's a bad person or an evil person or whatever. They all have their motivation, some psychologically, psychological rather, and for whatever reason. And we're going to talk a little bit more about reasoning, you know, towards the back end of this discussion tonight. And I think it's very relevant because everybody wants to know, well, why did they do it? You know, and in the criminal world, the motive isn't necessary to prove a crime. So you don't necessarily need a motive to prove a hoax, although it kind of, you know, puts the bow on the product at the end of the investigation. And that's what we always like to do.
And I can say too, Steve, that over the years, you know, with doing the 40 and slip, in the beginning, we were very pro Justin.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that this was, you know, a true story, and I don't think we ever presented it that way. Like, hey, we totally 100% believe this is true, but we did support it for a while, and then we turned. There came a point when we were just like, wait, what?
Right.
You know, and things just started to come to light, and we were just like,
what was your turning point?
Was it the downfall of Taser? Was that?
No,
that started it. But
I'd say that probably did start it a little bit.
So let's
but I think more would be because Alcorn for a long time did not tell me about the polygraph stuff that he knew about. And when I had found out about that and because what had happened was I was watching the whole Rose Sahibi vehicle there. That was the podcast that the 4 of them did, or 5 of them, however many they had on there. I don't know. And they had brought Alcorn on to talk to him because he was like beating on the door of this thing like crazy. And at that point in time, I guess they had kind of quieted him about this polygraph examination.
Yep, it's the only thing I regret.
When Steve finally came out and told me like the whole story about that, I was like, huh? They did what? I'm like, that's not what you do. You know, like because I'm a guy that believes in full transparency. You know, if you're going to do this stuff, it should be full transparency,
Right,
across the board.
So,
and I mean, I got a lot of pushback for even going up to the kill site from people that were involved in that whole thing. And I'm not going to name names on that one, but there are some pretty big names that did not want me going up to that campsite.
Oh yeah, and that can be understandable sometimes. You know, you don't know what other people are going to say, because the whole idea is the whole idea is when you have some outsiders coming in to this investigation or to an investigation, and you're not part of that, there is a concern that you may not get all the information. But to me, the bottom line was the testing of the steak, at least a piece of the steak and the boots, which turned out to be bear.
Right. Which that came later.
Right. Now, my point being is that, and I don't recall this, maybe you guys did. He didn't take the sample when it was dead. He came back and got a sample.
Correct.
Now, to me, that is just a little bit convenient to make this story some plausible deniability. Well, it was, but what was the time frame that he had shot this and came back?
I think it was a couple of months. There was a lot of snow on the ground.
Gotcha.
So he had to wait for it to thaw, if I remember correctly.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. So, it's very interesting that that if you think about and this is what I'm thinking as an investigator, if I was on a crime scene, you're trying to tell me that, even though he says, well, I came back a couple of, this is where it may sound good on paper that, well, he returned to the scene and a couple of months later, and, he didn't know what he was grabbing. He grabbed a piece of bear, actually. But then you have to think about it, that you're telling me a bear was killed dead on the same site the Bigfoot was just a couple of months earlier. What are the odds of that? You see, the odds are astronomical. So it makes no sense. The story, it's kind of like other stories we talk in crime that on face it sounds legit. Okay, he's giving himself some deniability, but when you look at the fact that, well, a bear would have had to have died there in the same spot the Sasquatch was, that makes no sense, and the probability of that is probably in the millions.
Well, I mean, if you go by Occam's razor, it was a bear.
Yeah.
That place is loaded with bears. I mean, I've heard stories of those guys camping up there and the bears just coming up and nudging their feet while they're sleeping.
Right.
I mean,
if you go back to the original story that Justin told, I mean, the very first original story in that hunting blog or whatever it was he posted in, he said it was a funny looking bear in that story. Oh. And so if he shot anything up there,
it was a bear.
It was probably a bear. And what would you do if you shot a bear illegally?
Which was what he was doing.
Which is what he was doing. Admittedly, he was up there hunting illegally. What would you do with that? You'd hide it. Because now, okay, if I get caught, and I think he said there was some game wardens or something up there that day, and he got scared, is my guess, and hid it under the branches or whatever, and a couple months later got it back. And I think the story got blown out of proportion when Roe and Sean and all those guys got in on it and realized it was a money-making thing.
It was truthfully, Steve, I remember hearing about this story before Roe and Taser had gotten involved in it. And it was building up traction then.
Yes.
So I don't know if it was a money thing. That's really hard to say. Was it a cover up? I can understand. I can understand for a fact that okay, maybe he shot a couple of bear. But why would you not cache them properly? So it doesn't make sense that, okay, I'm going to hide the bear so I can get it at another time when the game wardens aren't around.
I don't know if he planned on going back up there to get it. And then for some reason he posted that story. And then you have to provide evidence after that.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And just so, and this one's going to cover probably two of the four of us tonight. Yep, it did. From Jeff Stewart. The entire story to him made no sense to anyone who's a hunter. No one hunts bear with a 25-06, which is a varmint rifle, light than skinned animals, light bullets designed not to penetrate deeply. No one who hunts bear would use one. 2, no hunter would ever shoot anything walking on 2 legs, waving its arm, only humans, and blah, blah. And I agree.
Yeah.
And a couple of hellos to Patrick.
Pat.
And I want to see who else is here. Hello to Will L. and to Colonel Chubbs.
Colonel Chubbs.
Yeah, those are a couple of our guys.
Yes, hello, guys. But yeah, and Nani thinks that the body was supposedly gone, but he found some fur. And Cryptoville, probably the #1 winning comment of the night. Eric Beckford is the culprit of it all.
He's
God,
still with us,
Eric. Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and didn't he have his boot tested as well?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And and like I said, just from the way that I perceived him, initially I even had my questions about it, even back when we were, semi-supportive of it, because we were never all the way in. And the whole time I always said, I was like, he seems like the kind of guy that would try to pull something off.
Yep.
But I never was like, because I could, much like you, Steve, I couldn't just say yes without having a little more than that.
Right. And I always said that the proof would be in the testing. To me, that was tantamount, because on the surface, the story sounded good. What the investigators, the big name investigators, and I've had a sidebar with one of them more than once over this, it sounded good. Myself, at the time, JC Johnson, and Abe Del Rio from MNBRT Radio, we actually did a joint podcast where we interviewed him. And it was broadcast all over the place.
Yeah.
And the story remained consistent. And he actually, the story sounded real enough. Where he had some problems is the ethics portion of it. Because to me, knowing what I know now, how many years down the road, 8 years down the road, I know a lot more about verbal cues than I did back then. So in re-listening to that, especially when you get to the part where he contradicts himself. I shot it, I didn't care, and then all of a sudden I cared, and that kind of bounced up and down. So, and there's a couple other comments that I'd like to get to. Sean Godet says other Squatch would have removed the body. That's entirely possible. That's not without the realm, because we know chimpanzees will move their dead. Gorillas will move their dead as well. Jeff also made a comment that he's been charged with numerous game and fish violations and well-known poacher in the hunting world. That too is true. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Justin's been charged since then with poaching.
Yep.
So,
hello to Steve Cawthron. Exactly. So that being said, as we progress with this, the story just built a life of its own. And then the DNA went to the Ketchum Project. And we've talked about that. We beat that horse. As I like to say, we beat that horse to death here. And it went to the Ketchum Project. Now, I think what transpired was, as far as just before the announcement of the DNA, they had gotten the results of the DNA results. And Steve, if I'm wrong, you were kind of more in the know at that point than I was. But what had happened was that there was a lot of ruminations in the Ketchum camp, which I had ears to, that the Smeja sample was going to be their centerpiece. That was their big piece of evidence right there. Yep. And I do believe that when Melba tested it, it came back as the whatever
the hybrid thing
the
there.
hybrid, yeah, the Daganzagu, you know,
Yeah.
DNA.
yeah, right. So, and that's what prompted Smeja Smeja to release his DNA, saying, "Well, it's bear." So he kind of contradicted the whole thing right there, and basically said Melba is wrong, or and went so far, I believe, to even say she was lying.
I'm looking
And-
back on that now in my mind, and I'm wondering if that wasn't damage control. And the reason I say that is because everybody knows what happened with the Ketchum Project, right? It was a sham, and
yeah.
these guys are trying to put out a documentary. And so if she says this is some sort of hybrid, whatever, and they come out and say, okay, this is bear, we were mistaken, this isn't the right sample, you know, whatever. Is that damage control? Do you think? Maybe at that time?
I think you might be right.
Could be.
I didn't think about it that way at the time, but now that I look back at it, we know that she's going down, at least in the Bigfoot community.
Hello, Edward. Good to see you, sir.
Let's separate ourselves from her. That is what I think is going on.
Yeah.
Well, it was also tested by Dr. Brian Sykes too,
Right.
So that might be another factor, you know, to come back to the bear.
And
I don't know.
Sykes had much better reputation than Melba Ketchum,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. He was actually a DNA guy.
Yeah, he was actually a chemist, not a vet.
not a horse vet.
Cat vet.
Cat vet. Oh, that's right. Well, she did the horses too, I believe, if I remember. It's been a long time, man.
So, yeah. So it definitely was very interesting at that point, you know. And to me, when it came back as bear, that was it for me because, you know, like I said, what are the odds of a bear dying there? It just made no sense. It kind of. Now, there was a video done. I believe, let me hang on. I have this right in front of me. Unfortunately, it's Dead Bigfoot. And that was the Sahibi, or Sahibi, I don't know how he pronounces his name, documentary where he's sitting around having beers with Justin at the kitchen table. Now, so my question is, did certain elements cash in on Justin's story? Was that the process? Was that part of the motivation behind it?
Well, I can say, like, one of the things that I found out about the documentary later on, due to knowing people that were there when some of the things were filmed, is that there were tracks that they talk about that they found when they were there that were definitely bear, that they made out to be something else.
Or possibly something
else. And that's the type of stuff that immediately raises questions in me. You know, if you're trying to pass something else off as the real deal,
right,
there's a huge issue.
Yep.
And that was one of the other.
They were told while they were filming that.
Yes, they were told by at least two people.
Yeah.
That were there, that were present. I believe one of them was a biologist.
Yeah.
That it was a bear.
Yes.
Okay.
That the footprints that they were, filming in the documentary.
Now, you know, Barcatino had this great FLIR image.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the FLIR?
Okay, so I can let Steve answer for himself. My take on thermal footage is as thus. It doesn't prove much of anything.
I agree.
What was decent about the Catino footage was the recreation. But even with that, I still put a question mark at the end of it.
Because of Justin being involved.
Because of everything else that surrounds it. And it's I've met Bart. I think Bart's a decent guy and all. I think the recreation, how they went back and tried to do everything, having Kip walk through there and all that, it was a great comparison.
And you know what? The way I think about this is you have a couple of good level-headed guys, Kip and Bart, and they may have gotten some great FLIR footage there. But the unfortunate thing is that Justin being there kind of taints it based on what we know now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still think that video stands up because Bart and Kip did the recreation and did a very damn good job at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is something separate than the actual Smeja incident.
What I always said about that investigation that they did with that thermal footage is that's the way it needs to be done all the time. Now, regardless if I agree with the conclusion of it or not, that's how you investigate. That's the right way to do things. They brought in people who knew what they were doing. I'm here.
Okay. Because I just lost Steve's last statement there, tailed off.
Oh, I was just saying that I believe that investigation was done the way it should be done all the time.
Yeah.
And they brought in people who were certain,
and not just for thermal videos either.
Right. No,
I think the same thing should be done for videos that are taken. If someone wants to present something as a Bigfoot video, go back to the same site, do a recreation, do comparisons. All that should be done.
Yep.
Every time.
Yep. The other investigation that was done, I think, correctly was, and even though I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions, I've had arguments with the people who were involved over the years, was the Brown footage,
the Grays Harbor.
Yeah, Grays Harbor footage. I mean, that was done correctly. The investigation on that. Now, whether the conclusions are what I agree with or not, doesn't, that's neither here nor there.
Right.
Yeah. The investigation. And that's what we need to focus on. Sorry,
yep. Exactly. And so, and to me, anyway, that tells me that Bart and Kip had no clue, what was going on in Justin's mind. It's totally separate. So those guys are, as far as I'm concerned, they really just were, unfortunately, they were just, along for the ride there.
Maybe. Yeah. Make it look more legit. Who knows?
Could be.
Bart's a good dude. Bart would not involve himself with a known hoax. I know.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 1,000%. And nor would Kip. So they had kind of, what do you do? The story sounds good. Then we go to the $1 million Bigfoot bounty.
Thank God we didn't get on that show.
Yeah, tell me.
I said no. I was going to pull Bennett into that one, and I was like, no, I don't like the game.
No, man.
I dodged a bullet on that one. I can say
we all did. They were desperate to get some legitimacy. They were desperate to get some legitimacy to the actual post there. But in no offense to anybody that was on the show, but they didn't really get any long-term Bigfoot researchers. Maybe one, maybe two, but other than that, and ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bachochin is in the house.
Hey, Jay.
So, Elvis is in the building.
Hey, I found Jay. He's over in the chat room.
That's right. We found Jay. Movie's over. Of course. Oh, here. Yeah, she's been here the whole time. And the poor thing has heard me scream all my... That girl has heard more curse words probably in the last hour than she's probably heard in the last year trying to get this thing.
Oh, man.
No, come on, Steve. You're a calm...
We didn't see any part of the slow destruction of a man.
In the green room when that was going on.
Mother. Oh yeah, I was not a happy camper.
No.
I think I came in once while Steve was working on it. And I just, wait a minute. I'm just going to go ahead and exit out and let him vent this out. Everybody needs to vent their frustrations. If he would have held that in, I'm sure he would have exploded during the show.
Yeah, I usually do it on my show. So,
and Mick says, whenever I hear about Justin, I also hear Carmine's voice bellowing for a diet peach Snapple.
Oh, I should have put that picture.
And of course, here's the remark from Mike, who's been in the field many a time with me. Steve, you swear No shit. Sorry, I don't normally say that on the show, but I said the last year. No, she just came back in the last 10 years. Oy vey. Anyway, so what were your thoughts on the Dead Bigfoot documentary?
I actually enjoyed watching it. I mean, it wasn't a horrible documentary or anything.
No, not at all.
It was well put together.
Mhm.
But in my opinion now, looking back on everything, at the time I was like, oh, this is cool. Now it's like it was propaganda.
Yep.
That's how I see it. That's how I see it now.
Yep.
I find it fascinating that after the documentary came out, it really didn't go anywhere for them. And
No.
now, when's the last time you heard about Justin? When's the last time you heard about Roe or Sean or any of those guys who were involved in that? You know,
yeah, you really
moved on to other things. And so when you look back on it like that, then you understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to, I'm not saying they started out that way, but they were trying to cash out on it.
Right. And you know, my thoughts and my thoughts, and maybe not all the players that had joined Team Taser, because there were a lot of outliers to Team Taser, but at the very core of the Team Taser, I believe that they were out to get on television. That was their goal. And they got on the Bigfoot bounty and then they disappeared into the night. And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly with amongst some of us other researchers, said it was going to exactly happen. They're going to be short-lived. They're going to burn out fast.
Yeah.
They lit the flame quick and they burned.
How many members of Taser were on that show?
They're all, a lot.
Because the cast director contacted Michael Merchant, and he was the one basically casting the show. And because Michael called us, I think he called you, Chris, didn't he? He called me.
No, I was one that he did not.
Okay, well, he called me. Damian Bravo was supposed to be my partner, and something happened with that we won't talk about on this show. But so we didn't get on, but Michael Merchant was the one casting that show pretty much.
Yep.
So.
Yeah,
and
Frank, it shows.
Yeah.
Yep. And Frank asks, isn't Justin saying he's trying to shoot another Bigfoot? Well, it's been 8 years.
I haven't heard from Justin in years. Of course, I don't follow it nearly as much anymore as I used to. But
gee. So Suzanne writes, now you see what's going on in the chat room. A study I read that said the people that swear are intelligent.
Wow, we must be really
wow.
Here's the comment.
Switch over to the 40 and slip, ladies and gentlemen.
Look at
we curse every 2 seconds.
The most intelligent show on YouTube.
And then I get,
oh no!
And then of course, what does she write? He's the most intelligent man I know.
Steve was really intelligent prior to the show. I'm just telling you.
That. Oh, that IQ shot over 120.
Well, we was over 220. And then Mick writes, shoot another Bigfoot, then choke it out. Now that was the interesting thing. There was a deviation of the story somewhat too from what we heard on the original story, which we had on the podcast, to what he had said on Bigfoot Bounty. Now, my only caveat there is that could have been edited.
Yeah.
Not saying it was, could have been edited. I don't trust TV producers you make it shorter and just say this. They've done that too. And you got to be careful not to really cross yourself up like that.
The best I remember, Steve, his story, I'm going to say story, got better after he told it to us for the first time, on that show that everybody did the simultaneous progress.
Yep.
Because later on, when I was watching him talk on Bigfoot Bounty, and he started talking about the little one and stuff, I was like, whoa, when did this come into being? When did you start choking them to death and stuff? That doesn't make any sense.
I held that baby Bigfoot in my arms and I had to choke it.
That
should have been a clue to me.
Yeah.
Right there. Because the story, that was really the only real big deviation in the whole story.
Well, if you think about it too, if something's suffering and you're a hunter, you don't choke it out.
You got a gun with you.
You got a gun with you.
Yeah.
Just put it out of its misery real quick. Because for anybody that doesn't know this, that on a murder scene, it takes 2 to 3 minutes to actually of strong pressure on the neck muscles, because even though you have very sensitive and brittle cartilage here, the actual windpipe is actually very strong, and the neck is one of the strongest muscles in the body, believe it or not. So it takes 2 to 3 minutes to strangle somebody, and it's a very upfront and personal thing.
Mhm.
So to me, the whole idea of seems almost psychopathic, and it doesn't fit what the story was to begin with.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I don't have any ill will towards Justin Smeja. Like we was talking earlier, he may be an okay guy to hang out with and maybe drink a beer with or something. But after me and Steve, we have a little after show powwow every week, and after that show, we were talking, and I'm like, I'm telling Steve, oh, this dude's he's got a problem with his story.
When it came down to the whole killing of it, the motivations, and I'm going to watch Dead Bigfoot again. I wish I had time today to do it, but I had to work today, and I come home to an hour of. I'm still talking about it. You can tell I'm still. Damn it! I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to take a look. I'm going to take some of the verbal cues he shoots in his stories, because there's a lot of facial tics. There's a lot of, now you see the unfortunate thing there is that he's in a very friendly atmosphere.
Correct. Yeah.
But a story is still a story, and there still will be some cues that you can pick up on as you're reading neurolinguistics. So, I'm very curious to do that again. I
can. I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to jump in there, but I was just saying I can give him a word of advice. When he tells a baby Bigfoot look like in the face, don't tell him it looked like a boxer dog, because they don't.
Yeah, that's true.
That was another strange part of the story. And then the drawing that he had done didn't look anything like that.
Right.
It looked like a chimpanzee. So
the drawing, you see, and that happens to see how the story changes a little bit. When he's telling it verbally, but then he's got to put it on paper. He makes it look like a chimpanzee because that's the more acceptable version of it visually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another flag right there to say as we break this down, that way. So let's get to the polygraph, which is So this is Mr. Alcorn's show.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well,
as Chris York buries his head.
Yep. This was the thing that destroyed it for me, was the fact that, I had known Steve for a while, but Steve keeps a lot of stuff close to the chest when he doesn't know people very well at first. And eventually he told me about this, and this is what started to break the whole thing down for me. Because I was hopeful with it, I guess. But
the fact that somebody passes a polygraph exam makes you think, a certain way. But I'll give you a little backstory. Before I ever got into Team Taser, before I knew Justin, before I ever spoke to Justin or any of them, Rose, Sean, or anything, I was looking into Justin because of the story. It was phenomenal. In fact, I didn't believe the story at the beginning until all this came to being, and I got into Taser and all that stuff. And one of the things I did was look into, there's a polygraph examiner. Who is she? What does she do? Is she legit? All that kind of things. Because I couldn't find a lot of, I found some holes in the story that the picture, oh yeah, Gabby's here.
We want to shout out hello to all our new people.
So I decided to look into the polygraph examiner, and I actually did a whole entire article, and this is what Chris is referring to, breaking down why she's not a legit polygraph examiner.
Yeah.
And that's what it kind of set off Ro. Ro called me and said, "Hey, you're ruining this woman's livelihood." I mean, he gave me this big sob story why I shouldn't publish this article, which was already published. And if you go to my website now, it says I took down the original article and then I did an interview with her. And that's the interview you found a couple of weeks ago, Steve, when you were talking to me. Hey, there it is. Hey, look at that fine looking gentleman right there. So
By the way, that chest is has been enhanced.
that's
As did the
that's like
six-pack.
Ricardo Montalban's chest in the
100
Rathacon.
100% accurate.
The
I don't know
only
what you're
six-pack
talking about.
Alcorn sees is Pepsi.
So anyway, I do this scathing article on this polygraph examiner, and Roe, choose me a new one. But what I didn't understand what was going on at the time is they invited me into Taser at that point. Why would they invite me into Taser at that point when I'm doing a bad article on their main character, right? Well, now I look back on it, I'm like, okay, they needed me on their side, right? So anyway, I did a follow-up with the polygraph examiner, and it turns out she took a polygraph examination course called, the website is polygraphacademy.com. You can go look at it if you want. But the polygraph examination was called Polygraph Examination in a Box. I mean, yay, you know. And
But
so
yet-
that was my first clue.
But
So I started,
may I also point out that Mr. Sahibi had stated that this person was one of the top polygraphers
right.
in California, which is
Well,
not
she came with CAPE, which is the governing body of polygraph examiners, or some CAPE, and there's some other qualifications that she had.
I thought she wasn't a member of CAPE. She denied being a member of CAPE.
Right. So but on the documentary and on the, when Roe first interviewed her, she claimed she was. And so that's why in my article, I ask her, are you a member of CAPE? And she goes on some tirade about them just taking your money. So she's not a member of CAPE, because the investigator that I was at the time went to the CAPE website. Everybody who's a polygraph examiner that's registered with CAPE is on that website, and she was not there. So that was the first clue that it was probably not that legit. Then she had on her website, Polygraph Examiners of America. Sounds great, right?
Yep.
Well, it's run by the same guy who runs Polygraph Examiner in a Box, and his name is John L. Grogan.
And remember, you buy the course, you get a free year's membership in the polygraph.
Right.
Probably.
So John L. Grogan has been busted many times for ripping people off and stuff. He's the guy who runs that course that she took. I couldn't get her to say that she did or didn't take the course, but we know she did. And just today, I go back and find her new website, because the old one is owned by John Grogan, and she claims that it was nothing to do with her, but whatever. Her testimonial is on his website. And so I go back today, and here she's got the little icon for Polygraph Examiners of America, when she denied ever being part of that.
Right. Yep.
So to me, it turns out that, even the polygraph examiner in this situation wasn't 100% honest.
All right.
So,
and I'll give you a little knowledge of what I know about polygraphs. And a lot of people will say that, well, they are infallible, especially, but what it depends is on the person doing the polygraph exam. Many 9 years ago, I happened to, and this was actually a test shot while they were getting the lighting going. When I went out to Loch Ness, the gentleman sitting there, wow, I just had a brain fart, but I know his first name is David, and David was with Scotland Yard for 32 years. When he retired, he went to Canada for a 6-month academy, and what that academy teaches is people how to interview people, how to interrogate people, how to read the polygraph. So when you get somebody sitting on a polygraph, you need to squeeze them for information first, right? There's no evidence to me that was ever done by this polygrapher. She just came in, set the machine up. Okay, I'm going to ask you these questions, blah, 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 blah. With the
questions that weren't even written by her. They
Right.
were written by Bart, I believe.
Right. And she read the questions off, and that was it. In actuality, in a polygraph exam, now right there, that's actually the guy in the background adjusting the lighting, right over here. He is the cameraman, and the camera is set actually over to the left. This is our sound guy, but he is acting as a test subject for not only the camera, but he also, I think he calibrated the machine on him as well. So then they went in to talk to 3 people. But the interview that leads up to that is there is like a 15-minute, 20-minute interview prior to this, and he explains what the machine does, how it can, how it detects deception, how it's pretty infallible if it's run properly. And then he starts asking some test questions that really kind of squeeze, but the whole squeeze of it is that you're not going to beat the machine if you're lying, not with him sitting behind it. This was not done with Smeja. This was a simple sit down. This is the machine, what it does. He asked the questions, and we'll get into that. So this is actually David now on camera doing one of the subjects. The gentleman on the right-hand side is Chico Macala. He is a Loch Ness researcher who had an experience, and he had passed the polygraphs, as did Miss Moffat, Marianne Moffat, who was one of the Loch Ness residents. There was another gentleman there that they did not air, and his, oh God, I'm getting horrible with the names. I wasn't expecting to talk really that much about this, but the gentleman, he had the third person who George, oh God, I'll remember it, but he owned the boat company, and he had reported he had like several sightings over the years and had this whole Loch Ness sightings map, and he would give tours of the loch to people that were interested in Loch Ness Monster, and he failed the test miserably. So, and I remember David coming out to me and going, he did not pass. And so they actually cut that from the show, and because George was like pleading, listen, it's going to ruin my business, blah, 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 blah. So Mike was like, okay, well, we don't have to show that. We got the 2 witnesses here that, passed. That's fine.
Yeah.
So turn around, and 2 years later, the boat captain tries pulling a hoax by showing a picture saying, oh, I just got this picture. This is probably the best picture of the Loch Ness Monster yet. And I looked at it and I go, that's a picture from the production of this during the recreation when we put the hump in the water.
Yeah.
And he tried to pass this off as real, and I actually got in the newspapers over there again, shooting it right down, saying George Edwards, that's his name, George Edwards, I'm remembering. But Mr. Edwards had obviously taken that picture when we were filming Truth Behind the Loch Ness Monster, and him or his nephew was up on top sometimes taking pictures of what we were doing.
Yeah.
So that it was pretty apparent that he had faked that. But the difference I see is, like, when you look at the setup of the machines, a lot of these are computerized. Now, what David explained to me is that when the machine will auto read the variables, but the reason why you go to school for so long is because the computer program itself is not infallible. So you have to also look at the readouts. Once you're done, you print out the actual readout, and you make sure it's their results on the computer results match with actually reading the polygraph machine like the old way of doing it. So you have a double check system. Now, whether or not that was done, I have no idea. But as you can see, there is your equipment. And also, if you notice that David over here has quite a thick file, because he has questions that he wrote up, understanding their experiences, and he's going to go after them for those questions. He wasn't prompted by the director to ask these questions or given a list to ask these questions. This is something he talked with them, and he developed his own questions for it. So that's where that kind of falls apart there.
I see and noticed in that one picture that they're always facing away from the polygraph examiner. But in this
Correct.
picture here you're showing with Justin, he's looking right at her.
Right. And the reason why you do that is if the polygraph examiner throws a funny look, or looks like cuts a facial expression that emits displeasure or
Like, hey, dude, you just lied.
Right. You know, I tell you, you know, here comes the test. You know, you don't want to see that.
I shot a Bigfoot.
What? So when I interviewed her,
Phone.
I asked her about that. I said, "Did it shock you that you were giving somebody a polygraph examination for, Bigfoot, shooting a Bigfoot?" Like, I don't. She basically told me, "I don't care. I just making money." That kind of thing. That was her answer.
She didn't-
And
she does not care. And
no.
you see, that's not the attitude the polygrapher comes in at.
And polygraphy schools are quite extensive. They go on for several weeks. This polygraph academy in a box that you get is basically you do it on your own time. I mean, you don't go to school for it. The guy does offer classes and things like that, but you're interpreting all that stuff on your own without guidance, really. When you buy this guy's course,
right? Exactly.
So anybody can do it. It costs $1,000. You can go get one today. They're still in existence. So I'm not going to, but he does offer classes.
And Sean, people can be coached also into beating polys. They can, but it's not always successful. Again, it depends on the polygrapher. It depends on the level. Now, understand this. We have a polygraph examiner here that obviously is not, the only thing I can see is she's got her bag maybe between him and her and Justin, so he may not actually be able to see her clearly. That may be part of it. Stay tuned next week when Justin claims he choked out the polygraph examiner. Nick has got a wicked sense of humor.
I got to tell you though, I caught hell. I mean, literal hell when I posted that article about all this stuff we're talking about tonight. And I was a young, naive investigator at the time. I mean, I had no clue. I was new into the Bigfoot world at that time, as far as the online Bigfoot world. And I pulled the article, and that is still to this day the only regret I've ever had. Even that whole hoax thing that I fell for. I fell for a hoax. Chris likes to pick on me about the Norm Glasser thing.
Norm Glasser head in a box.
Even that isn't a regret. That happens. But me pulling that article, that's the biggest
Chris,
regret
I
I've
found
ever
this
had.
great thing, and I'm like, man,
that's another one we should talk about someday. That was horrible.
I was like, here, Steve, have all the rope you need.
What a good friend Chris is to me. But anyway, so the one regret I have in the entire time that I was doing these investigations is that I pulled that article, and I do regret that.
Yeah, you never should have done that.
No, I shouldn't have.
Well, it comes down to this, and this is the strategy they played. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer.
Yep.
You would come out on the side of the truth, and you would ask some very valid questions, and they wanted to hush it. That in itself should tell you something about.
And it seems like they did that. It seems like they did that with a lot of the people that were loud in that group.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh, well, come in."
Right.
You're one of us now.
But then what happened when everything came crashing down?
Oh, they wiped their hands of us so quick.
You got it.
I got berated by one Michael Merchant. Steve got berated by one Michael Merchant.
I remember the day. I remember the day clearly. Michael, I really enjoyed Michael. He was, we believed at the time that he was going after this in a scientific way and all this stuff. Turns out, obviously, if you've seen any of Michael's stuff lately, obviously that's not the truth. I don't know what his game is, but he's basically my Bigfoot hero, that kind of thing. I looked up to the guy. So he calls me on the phone, or we did a Google Hangout, I think it was. Him and his, what's her name? Kathy, right?
Kathy Villera.
Yeah. They called me and they talked to me about being on Bigfoot Bounty and all this stuff. And we had Damien on the other line. And then a week later, 2 weeks later, this whole thing just falls down and he just starts berating us and everybody. I mean, it just fell apart that quick.
What was he berating you about specifically?
The Lupe Mendoza photo.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. We wouldn't toe the line.
Right.
Yeah. Right. He wanted everybody to say it was real and it wasn't. You know, that's at least how we look at it.
It was a fallen over tree. It was a root ball, and everybody in that group wanted all of us, myself, Steve, and a bunch of other people, to just go along.
And we weren't allowed to do it.
Right.
Because we were part of Team Taser, or it was
Right.
Zen Yeti at the time, or whatever it was called at the time.
Yeah.
And out of respect to some of the people that we liked in that group, we decided not to do it. And we probably should have right away.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, we decided, you know, maybe things will smooth over, and we would have come out with it eventually. And we did come out with it eventually, but it was a bad time.
Let me say this. When you have, and this rings true to when I was on the slip last week.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a group or a person trying to get you to toe the line, what is that telling you?
Yeah.
What it's telling me is that there was more than one person in that group that knew that this was not real.
Oh, yeah.
You
can't even at this point tell me that everybody there. You can't say everybody there didn't know. They all knew.
I don't know that Michael knew it. I don't know. I don't think Michael knew at the beginning with the Justin thing, because they cut him out.
Not the Justin thing. I'm talking about the
loopy thing for sure.
The other stuff, the stuff that got us, blackballed.
Yeah, well,
and that became why. I mean, when we started looking back at everything, we were just like, what? Like, what were we involved in?
And it was like a total 180 at the end there. I mean, it was like unexpectedly that bad.
Right. And, I say this, what it goes back to is that how dare Rose Sahibi tell you you're ruining this woman's career? Because in truth, he's the one who promoted her as being one of the best polygraphers in California. When you talked to her, you found completely the opposite. When you did the investigation in her background, you found that completely opposite.
Yeah. And even today, when I went and checked on her stuff,
and I agree,
still holds true.
Right. You're new to this. You were new to this at the time this was going on. So, it
was my first big investigation.
Well, yeah, myself, I would have been like, well, you know what? I would have not only implicated her, but I would have implicated him for promoting her to be something more than she is.
Yeah.
I was blinded by what I perceived to be people who were above me, above me in a better position than I was. And I was blinded by that. And I don't make any excuses for it. I was wrong.
No. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
We all make missteps. This is we learn every day we do this. I don't know everything. I don't expect to know everything. 10 years from now, I won't know everything. Maybe 20, but I'm just kidding. But the point being is that, you did the right thing eventually. You came out with the truth. And now we fast forward to now, and now we can put this into really historical perspective.
Well, you've seen the questions that I asked the polygraph examiner after I took they were basically the article, but asking her directly.
Right.
And so I wanted to get the same thing out. And that's the only way I knew how to do it.
Right. Well, I'm gonna pull this like this I'm just looking at some of the questions.
She sent me a pretty nasty email prior to this interview too, by the way. And the Utah, remember what was it? The Utah guy, the guys in Provo, the Provo Bigfoot. Those people sent me the most scathing email I've ever gotten. It was so bad.
Well, okay. So in the Bigfoot Lunch Club article by Guy Edwards, you stated that there were 40 questions asked, but only 17 show on the report. Why is that? And what she says is every chart is formulated to have 10 questions. 4 are known truths, 8 are known or 2 are known lies, and 4 are relevant questions. Each chart has 4 relevant. Maybe that's how she was saying. Maybe that's how. Maybe that's how she was saying. It took 40 questions and 10 charts to get to the 17 questions answered.
I didn't get I didn't get that one. There's a lot of weird numbers in there.
I think that had all those questions, they should have been transparent. And usually Like the video, I would love to see the video of the actual polygraph examination. That was never shown.
We did see a good portion of it privately, I believe, at the time, didn't we, Chris?
I don't think I did. You
'Cause,
may have.
remember Carl Lancelot? He released footage prior to the
Oh
movie coming out,
yeah, that's right too. I forgot about Carl.
and I think Carl had a lot of. Now that footage is long gone,
Right.
obviously.
So you saw it. You saw the footage.
I believe there was a lot of footage of it. I don't think it was the entire thing.
Gotcha. Okay. So what you're saying is true. There may have been like 40 questions. My question would be, how many did he pass of those? It seems like they
Right.
selected the amount. Because to me, if she is interested in just getting paid, to me that says I'm going to give you the result you want. So I'm going to ask these 40 questions, and the ones that are true, we're going to move over here and we're going to put them on the chart. If there's ones that may be the same question, you can ask the person 5 questions. Did you kill your wife? No, truth. Did you kill your wife? No, truth. Did you kill your wife? No, truth. Did you kill your wife?
I don't believe the
No,
footage
false.
of her actually asking the questions was even in there. I think it was just the footage of them setting up. Maybe there
Right.
was 1 or 2.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
See, and that's a shame, because the whole segment should have been filmed because it was there. But again, transparency was not very apparent there. So you actually said, who actually hired you to do the testing and what was the date? And she said, Roe contacted me. I did the polygraph on Saturday. What was your reaction when told that this test was being performed to determine whether or not Justin shot one or more Bigfoot or Bigfoot type creatures? Doesn't matter to me what the questions my client has. I just get paid to ask the questions. Oh, wrong. You get paid to get to the truth. You are a polygrapher. You are you were there not to just ask the questions. You're there to determine the truth, if this person's being truthful or fake. And that apparently tells me a lot there why he could have breezed through this polygraph. And my guess is that this may have been something set ahead of time. Listen, we're doing this documentary and we'd love to have you in here. So we're going to pay you your fee to come here and do this polygraph. But he's got, to me, it something doesn't ring right with that.
The story we were told about how they hired her was that she was the only one who would show up. Basically, it was on a short notice type thing.
That's not necessarily true. We find something else.
Just saying that's the story.
See, the thing is when I see something like this, when a person is paid to come on to do something like this, okay,
right.
It reminds me of when a prosecution and a defense both hire separate investigators and they both come up with what the defense comes up with something that is totally for their side, and the prosecution comes up with something that's totally defends their side. And when it comes to paying people for results, it becomes problematic.
Well, being a private investigator, let me explain that is probably watching a little bit of television. Usually you see that with expert witnesses, not necessarily investigators, because
right. And I threw out investigators there as just,
investigators will say there's been more than one time that I've been out there and said, well, I'm looking at this case. It's pretty rock solid. There's nothing I can do about, this DNA matches or that, or this matches.
Right. You are right about the expert witness thing. I mean, it's more common there.
Yeah. One of my most interesting cases, and I'll just do a quick sidebar, was I was investigating an arson fire, and I had spoke to the homeowners, and the insurance company was thinking the homeowners were the ones that set it. After talking to the homeowner, I had realized that it wasn't the homeowners that likely set the fire. It was actually the family that was living with them. So I ended up talking with the fire investigator and the sheriff's investigator, and we all agreed across the board. So that's so I just reported back to the insurance company, hey, the homeowner's good. I agree with it. Fire investigator agrees with it. The sheriff agrees with it. Okay, good. We'll pay him. Done. And that's, let the sheriff's department work the rest of the deal because of the criminality of it. I don't want to get in there and get them off track. I'm well versed to get them, but I'd rather have the law enforcement get their confession rather than me, because it, keeps me out of court. But so yeah, so you got there are different things. Now a polygrapher, they're an expert witness in some courts. Usually polygraphs are not admissible. They are in certain states.
Mm-hmm.
They are. I don't ask me what. They're not admissible in New York. Law enforcement agencies use polygraphs, and actually private employers use polygraph, and the FBI uses polygraph to hire, and they use that as a baseline because they are somewhat reliable. They are not foolproof.
Mm-hmm.
They are not perfect, but they for the most part report the truth. In this case, again, we are looking at somebody that I believe to be unqualified, uncaring, and there may be a little bit of a mercenary, aspect to this.
Well, you could see in her answers, she typed in all caps for everything. She was angry that I was even asking the questions of her.
Yeah.
And if she did her job correctly, it occurs to me that she'd be happy to answer these questions,
Yeah.
And the email that she sent me was, and I don't have it anymore, obviously, but wasn't very nice to me. But I reached out to her, and it was my job to clear up what I had written about her, and I wanted to make sure. So
I've always said that Steve is a turd stirrer.
I used to be. I mean, if I got into something and Steve and I worked on some things together back in the day, I would just go. You couldn't stop me. I just kept going and going. And that's why I'm out of it now, because I spent way too much time.
You delved in way too deep.
Yeah.
But you need to.
This was part. Yeah. I suppose I could have.
I'd like to see Alcorn get that fire back in him.
I tried to get him to do it a few times, and I get the same pushback every time.
Here's the problem, though. This whole situation, the whole Rick Dyer thing, the last hoax he did, all that stuff just wears on you. And I commend you, Steve, for keeping up with it and keep doing it because it's just so much BS, and you can only take so much of that. And that's basically why I stepped back. And you got you know what the Bigfoot community is like nowadays. I mean, it's rough. So
yep. Well, I look at it this way: to me, it's all about education.
Yeah.
And if you're putting bad stuff out there, that's miseducating people. And then people will get these crazy conclusions.
Well, and my big thing lately too is we do a show, which we're not very prolific or anything like that, and a lot of people think that we're volatile and that we're just, we're just going to bash on people, which is totally not the case. But my thing is, I've reached out to people who we've had differences with, who we've had differences of opinion with. Hey, come on the show. Let's talk. I'm not going to bash you. Steve's not going to bash you. Matt's not going to bash you. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion and talk about it. And there are very few people, maybe one, and I think I regret that one.
No, there was a couple that came on that.
They just won't come on to talk about it. And I'd like it if, some of these people who have these issues with us would just come on and talk.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the things that is sorely lost in this whole social media crap that we have going on, is that it's just attack. Don't care if you're right. Don't care if you're wrong. This is how I feel. I'm just going to attack you.
Yeah.
Why can't you just sit down and talk to me?
Right. Exactly. One of the things I like to point out too, the things that I did after talking with Steve a few weeks ago, well, it was a couple of months ago, we talked about this.
It's a while ago now.
Yeah. And one of the things I did was pull up the American Polygraph Association protective procedures, and you need to do an assessment of examinee's emotional state, medical information, technical questions to the evaluation, their examinee's response capabilities, factual analysis of case information. That wasn't done, right? A pre-test interview and detailed review of the questions. That wasn't done. Quality control reviews. That wasn't done. None of these steps seem to have been done.
Okay. Well, that's for accredited polygraph examiners.
Right,
She is not one.
Right. I know, but what I'm trying to get at is this
But
is
she
how
was the best in the state, Steve.
yeah. But this is how you get to a truthful polygraph exam, where this one was just, a fly by night. Hey, okay, here's the machine. I'm going to ask you these 5 questions, 10 questions, 40 questions, whatever. Have a nice day. I'm going to earn my $365 and out the door I go. That's exactly what happened.
And you can tell just by the way she answered these questions that that's what she was there. She was there to make a buck.
Right.
It was a little cheaper back in those days. I think it was under 200, maybe 250, but now it's like, I went to her website today. She charges $450 for this now, and people still pay her. But if you read the reviews that she gets, then you start to see more of the picture,
Right.
And all of these examiners, there's a ton of them out there that have this same qualification. Every one of them has the same kind of reviews, and the reason is because they're not real polygraph examiners,
right?
They're a polygraph in a box.
Oh man, that question is a big cop out too. I mean, the question number 1 there. What I'm barely able to read it, but
okay. So question number 1, and these are the questions that were on the polygraph test.
yeah.
Question number 1: in late October 2010, at the site you brought others for a body search in July 2011, did you directly fire on 2 animals, one adult and what you believe one juvenile of a species others would logically term as Bigfoot or sasquatch?
See, that's a back door. I mean, that's open. So he could think, well, in his mind, he thinks people are seeing bears and calling them Bigfoots and Sasquatches. So, hey, man, yeah, he could pass that. That's easy.
So you actually have the list of questions.
I sure do.
Do
you think I come unprepared? Question 2 was the first shot fired on site a direct hit to a bipedal animal you have never seen before?
So these questions were, well, obviously we know now that Bart wrote the questions, but they were clearly not written by somebody who's unfamiliar with the subject of Bigfoot.
Right. And did you stop and purchase cigarettes in Sierra City while on your way home after the Sierra Kills shooting?
Well, that's an easy one to answer.
You know what?
Wait, she said the questions were should be 2 known lies on there. Do you see any of those?
No, none of these questions were any of the known lies or anything like that. Okay. None of the control questions were released. That is an issue. All of the statements you were making in regards to the shooting 2 bipedal primates, now they call them primates, which the incident is now being called the Sierra Kills true. Is the entire Sierra Kills story a hoax? No.
See, that's an open-ended question too. Is the entire Sierra Kills story a hoax?
Yeah.
Well, no.
Yeah. Now, part of it might be true. He might have actually been there.
Oh, I have no doubt he was there.
He might have shot something,
would there be, or do you see, and the problem is the questions aren't straightforward. For example, would there be, or do you have? Well, those are 2 questions.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
It said, would there be a reason? Do you have a reason? You need to ask both those questions separately. See, this is telling me there was no other questions really involved, like she's stating, as far as
Steve,
that.
Have you shown this yet to your polygraph guy?
No, I haven't seen him in years.
It would be interesting to see his take on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
David Bird, BYRD. That's his name, David Bird. See, I told you. My brain cells are starting to repair itself from exploding earlier. Were you frustrated about not being able to locate the carcasses on your first return trip to the site?
Yeah, of course he was.
Do you truly believe that a piece of flesh you processed, cut into pieces, and sent to various labs is a piece of flesh from the unidentified animal you have claimed to shoot from the Sierra Kills incident? Again,
unidentified animal.
Right. And again, it's such a long question.
Yeah.
Did the more direct question would have been, did you take a piece of a Bigfoot from that site to be tested in labs? That would have been the proper question.
Correct.
Right. And is the piece of flesh given to Wally from the same source? That again, that's moot. Has the department, and this is what I find interesting, has the Department of Fish and Game taken interest in the Sierra Kills incident and questioned you on several occasions? Yes, no deception. They probably have, because they probably thought he was poaching.
Well, they showed up at his door. They really did. Yeah.
Because my guess is they may have collected the bear.
Trying to figure out who shot that bear. Yeah.
There was no charges at that time, so obviously they didn't have the evidence to do anything with it.
Or they felt that since he wasn't on scene, they didn't bother charging him.
Also, though, I guarantee that he was caught later because they were watching him. You know?
Oh, absolutely. And what I think happened is this: okay, they find the two dead. They find the bear dead, poached. They grab him. They turn around and then hear weeks later about this story. So they question him. He denies it. Says, "Oh, it was a Bigfoot." Now he's denying that it was a bear. So there's no admission to them. He wasn't on site when they found the bear. So it's kind of like it's a really weak case.
Yeah.
You know, because you have to show intent to commit a crime. And he says, "Oh, I thought it was a Bigfoot." There's his out.
Right.
Yeah.
Do the artist's renditions accurately depict the animals you shot in the Sierra Kills? After the shootings of these strange animals, the Department of Fish and Game show up at your house. Again, another question about it. Did strange animals you shot in the Sierra Kills incident look like a large human dressed up in a bear suit? He answered yes.
That's probably my favorite one.
He answered yes.
Did it look like a human dressed up in a bear suit?
Yeah, sure.
Not a Bigfoot suit,
but a bear suit.
A bear suit.
Right.
Those questions, and I said they weren't written by a polygraph examiner.
Right.
But they were definitely not written by a polygraph examiner, because those are not correct. None of them. That's not what you would ask.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, really.
That's the first time I'm seeing them. I didn't know the question.
Yeah, that's actually the first time I've seen the questions too, and the bear suit one is the one that gets me.
That is a very interesting question.
A bear could look like a human in a bear suit because it's a bear, right? Those are easy to pass. They didn't say anything about did it look like a human in a Bigfoot suit. Well, if he would have said, "Well, yes," then no, he would have passed. He wouldn't have passed that one.
Yeah.
So they left him some easy outs on those.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of perspective.
And those were that's the actual chart, as we can see.
Had I gotten those questions, I wouldn't even had to do the article on the polygraph examiner, because I would have known right then that it was a bunch of shit.
Yep. So I just I'm looking at this, and there's no.
I think this is one that makes, like, I know it makes me kind of angry, but I think Steve as well, like, because we kind of were in for a while.
Yeah.
And it just, especially as it got torn down, it just made us feel stupid.
Oh yeah.
Oh no! There's no need for that. I mean,
but you get what we mean, though, Chris. I mean, having it torn down in front of us, it made us more and more angry.
Yeah, and the fact that we invested so much of our time and effort into the Team Taser thing,
right.
That makes it even all the more worse.
Right, but don't beat yourself up, guys.
Oh no, we're not anymore.
Anybody, good investigators can be pulled into something and then find out later that it's just a bunch of crap. It's what you do after you find out it's a bunch of crap is what determines your character.
And like Steve,
you guys are right up there. I mean, you've got good character. I can tell.
Oh, you haven't seen our show, have you, Chris?
well, like Steve was telling you about the Norm Glasser hoax. Okay, Steve came to me with that picture. And I was like, I I'm like, but dude, if you want to bring that on the show, we'll talk about it as much as you want. Okay. But I was like, I'm not saying that I think that's a Bigfoot.
Right.
He went, interviewed the guy. He's like, I think it, I really think this is the thing, man. It sounds like he's telling the truth. And like a day later, who was it? Adam?
Yeah. What was his last name? I can't remember now.
I want to say Bird.
Yeah, Adam Bird.
Yeah.
Over in the UK, he found where the picture was from. So we instantly did a show calling out the hoax.
Yeah.
Even though I was all for it before that, because that's what you do. If you get fooled, you don't keep on with the story. And I think that's the biggest problem in not just the Bigfoot community, but all these paranormal communities out there is they get fooled. Now they got to cover their tracks. Now they got to, we just came right out with it the next day. And we gave all the credit to Adam, of course, because he's the one who busted the hoax.
Right.
But it is what it is. If you're wrong, you got to say you're wrong. And I think that's probably the lesson we learned, or at least I did, from the whole Taser Justin incident, because now I know, okay, I'm not going to hold back anything anymore. It's just going to come out if I know it,
Yeah. I remember reading a book called 50 Large one time.
Oh,
had
yeah,
a guy that was pulled into a hoax there. And what he did really impressed me. It really did.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, going over that story last week was fun, Steve.
that was quite the story too.
Yeah, it is.
And that had more twists and turns than this thing. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, this story is it. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of just, like what?
Yeah. Well, Frank made a great comment. Said if it looks like a man in any kind of suit, you don't shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what,
Yeah.
And I believe Smeja said that on our podcast that he thought maybe it was a guy in a suit. Then why the hell would you shoot?
Right. Yeah.
Remember that? That was another issue we had with that.
And I mean, even if he was to say, like, I was afraid, you were standing outside of the door of the vehicle. All you did was step out of it. You could easily have gotten back in the vehicle and been safe.
He only had one foot out of the vehicle, which is illegal, I guess.
Yeah.
Where he's at.
Yeah. How about getting back in the vehicle and just leaving?
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, just instead of shooting, get back in the vehicle. Like, I don't understand the logic behind it. I don't think I've ever understood the logic behind him actually taking the shot.
I think you guys hit it on the head at the very beginning of the broadcast, because this makes a lot of sense to me from a criminal psychology point of view. So here's this guy, sees a couple of bear, bang, bang. Okay, I got some bear. Or let's take a drive around, see if there's any rangers around. Oh shit, there's rangers downrange. I can't drive out of here with them. So we're going to have to beat off. So they create this backstory of a Bigfoot. Just in case they get a knock on the door. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, knock on the door. Well, it's a Bigfoot. Now we have this narrative. And then other people pick up on it. He sees it a way, if I go public, I'm going to vindicate myself. He's not worried necessarily even about making money at this point. He's worried about saving his ass.
Yeah.
That's what I
out of jail.
If he shot anything up there.
Well, there's a money factor because the fines on that probably are rather large.
Yeah. Maybe
even 50 large.
I've always wondered, Chris said at the beginning of the show, he met Justin. Justin's a prankster.
Right.
He could have just been pranking this website at the beginning, and it turned into something
It got bigger than what he thought it would.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah, at that point, what are you going to do? You're going to try and cash in on it. You got a filmmaker who wants to make a documentary.
Right.
I mean, I can't say that I would have done anything different. Now, I probably would have. I mean, I wouldn't have lied about things like that, but a lot of people would. A lot of people would say, okay, I see the money signs. And of course, none of it ever made any real money.
Yep.
I mean, Bigfoot Bounty didn't even pay that much money. What was it? A couple $100 a week or something?
Oh, God. And they had to struggle to get paid.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It took weeks and weeks, I think.
Yeah, they had to hound the company to actually pay them.
So there really wasn't any. Yeah, Justin got to appear in a few documentaries. He got the
so how many episodes
It was one season.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
It was
you
one
don't
season.
remember what happened with that, Steve?
No.
Oh, they started doing an episode a week, and then after like 2 weeks, they doubled up the episodes and finished it out in like 3 weeks.
They just dumped that show.
Well, yeah, because the ratings were horrible, probably.
Exactly.
Even
Dean Cain couldn't save that one.
Yeah, the only reason I watched it is because I knew everybody on the frickin' show. You know.
Well, here's the issue with that whole thing is that the fact is they offered me a position on the show, which I actually told them I wasn't interested after meeting them and them discussing to me what the show was about. I said, no, thanks. Thought about it, not interested. I'm sorry. $200 a week? No.
It
Sorry,
might have been a little more than that, but it was so low that it was like a per diem or something like that. And it was, people don't understand about reality TV is unless it's a big show, you get paid squat.
Well, you get paid very little.
That's not necessarily true if you know a casting attorney who I had a conversation with a few years ago, thanks to JC Johnson.
Yeah, none of us know casting attorneys, so
and the minimum you should get at least 5 years ago was $2,500 an episode.
Yeah, and that didn't happen.
No.
Yeah, that did not happen with them.
Well, exactly, and that's why I would have been like, wait, you want me to,
I think there were two versions of the show, Steve. When you were approached, they were actually looking for a more legit type researcher.
Wow.
When we were approached, I think they were just looking for believers because that's the casting director, and I won't name her name, but she casts for The Voice. I mean, she's not, a not known person. She's very well known, but she tells me one day on a Skype call.
No, he doesn't.
One day, she tells me one day on a Skype call that you believe in Bigfoot, right? I was, well, yeah, I'm kind of a skeptic, but I do, because at that point I was starting to become more skeptical than anything. And because Damien and I, we were going to be more skeptical on the show. They didn't want anything to do with that. They wanted true believers, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I had to get on the show, I would have had to change what I thought about the whole subject.
Exactly.
So
And
when they approached you, it was probably not the same thing.
well, when they approached me, they said they were going to have these little contests each week to see who can collect the most Bigfoot evidence. And I'm like, time out. And then I got thinking to myself, what are they going to do? Salt the area with phony Bigfoot evidence? It made no sense.
If you would ask me, that's probably what happened.
Exactly.
In my opinion.
Yep. And Jeff's also turned the show down as well. So anyway,
we didn't turn it down, but we just didn't get on.
Well, I'm sorry, guys.
No, well, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. We were doing it. If I would have been on the show, it would have been for exposure only.
Right.
And I would have had that. Of course, that didn't work out for any of them, but that's why we were considering it.
Yeah. Let's skip.
I'm the exact opposite of that. I don't really like media exposure, and matter of fact, doing this show is kind of rough on me, but I go ahead and bear through it. but me and Steve have an agreement. If I've ever come up with a body down here or something, he comes from New York here to announce it to the public and stuff, and I just kind of sit back on the sideline.
Hey, Steve, if that ever happens, I want a phone call, and I'm going down with you.
Yeah, look at York down from Maine.
I want all the cameras pointed at that dude, not me. I'll be back there behind them watching, looking over their shoulder.
You have to understand.
Y'all got about 10 hours to get to my house and packed.
You have to understand where we were at the time of that show. We were all part of Team Taser. Team Taser was a media outlet. That's all it was. And we were all media people.
Hey, you know what? If that ever happens, the only thing I can think of is when Facebook Find Bigfoot did the bus trip or the RV trip to shooting Bigfoot.
Oh, God.
Oh, can we say Bigfoot? And then at the end of the show, they're like, oh,
that was another investigation I did back in the day. I think you had already figured it out, but I uncovered their names, their real names, and boy, that didn't go over well either.
Well, here's an interesting story about the name game. Actually, their names were exposed in 2009, 3 years before the Bigfoot hoax.
Right.
The person that exposed their names, their true names, was Matt Moneymaker. And it actually was posted on the Bigfoot Evidence blog at the time. Now, here's the interesting thing. Number one, I know, though, I'm not going to name their names now. I mean, it's but the one guy was owned a whole thing, a series of swimming schools in the Minnesota area, I believe, or Michigan area, one of the two. The other guy, I'm not sure what his name was, Jim, but he had been on Coast to Coast AM under his real name.
Yes.
Talking about the government and weather change and how the government is manipulating the weather.
It's the HARP system.
Exactly.
The other one.
So when
I was a governor.
So when I post that, I get a text from a PM from Chris Noel.
Oh, God.
And he insists that I retract it and say that I was wrong about it. My immoral deed. I said, well, I wasn't the one that exposed their names. Anybody is going to find this at any given time. It's already on the web.
Yeah, it wasn't.
You need to tell people you were wrong and retract that. So you want me to lie? Yes, I want you to lie. Well, I don't lie. So here's this supposedly respected researcher asking me to lie.
Here's another shocker that never got released to the public because of the whole Team Taser, Rose Sahibi, Sean evidence thing. They were playing off of the Provo, Utah Bigfoot too. Guess who knows the names of those people?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I figured that. I don't recall them offhand right now. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah,
Steve, we got to talk this week.
Steve busted that one wide open.
Yeah, we got to talk this week.
I'll tell you a little bit about them. They were college students at Brigham Young.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right. I think I know who they are. Well, I know their relation. So yeah.
Beard card.
Yeah, it's weird.
Boy, did I get that was the worst email I ever got, was from Mrs. Beard Card. She was not happy. I emailed them. I wasn't going to put it out publicly. I emailed them, and yeah, that didn't go over well.
Well, I got a question for the whole panel here. Has anybody else saw the video? It's put out 3 or 4 days ago, I think it was, or maybe it's 6 days ago, from Salt Fork State Park.
Oh,
crap.
God.
That
Crap.
horrible piece of crap.
Crap.
Yeah, crap.
In case you didn't hear me the first time, Chris, crap.
Yeah, I was wondering what those impressions were. Yeah.
I think you know now.
Yeah. Steve, I got to head up on out of here.
Yeah, okay, brother.
But thanks for having me on, and we'll catch up soon. I'd like to do a whole show about your new book.
Oh, absolutely.
In the future, sometime in the future. So,
Yeah.
but
Did
yeah,
Did you get a chance to delve into that at all?
I've been enamored with so
the
much
answer to
stuff.
that is no.
No, I actually no, I did. I started into it, into the first part of it, like where you talk about how you got into Bigfoot.
Mhm.
But I've had my son here this weekend, and I've had just a bunch of stuff going on, so I haven't had a chance. But thank you to everybody, all your fans and everything. And Chris, it was nice meeting you. And
thanks, Chris, for joining us, man.
And
pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, great talking with you too. And I'll catch up with you soon, Steve.
Okay, my brother. Take care. So we're left with, now we got 2 Steves and 1 Chris left.
I'm outnumbered.
Well, and we're winding down the show anyway. We got a few minutes left.
Oh yeah.
Look at the time, how it flies.
We're getting close.
I mean, we were 20 minutes late, so we can run about a few minutes over, so we can catch up on a couple other things, a little bit of business. But one thing I know, and it's developing, this story that I'm working on right now as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
If many people had caught that Expedition Bigfoot, turns out, and Steve's got that grimace.
No, I've just heard what you've talked about and what we talked about last week.
It turns out that at least one particular episode, I haven't seen the series, but I'm going to have to actually now turn around and watch the entire series. But it turns out that at least one of the episodes, remember we had, after the airing of the first or second show, we had showed the Jeep tracks, or the track next to the grass. Well, as it turns out, there was a couple of places they found while out searching in the remote forests of Oregon they found a mine shaft, and they also found this old cemetery. Turns out that both those items are at a resort in Oregon, and they are very well known. And it sounds like there was some scripting going on.
Oh no!
So it looks like that show may be the equivalent to the Megalodon or the captured Sasquatch. So
For entertainment purposes only.
right.
The only problems I have with that is that they're portraying it as real, and if it's not, no, I haven't watched the show. I know Russell, I think I spoke to him on a couple occasions, but I can't really say much about that. But if you're portraying it as real and it's not, that's not good.
No.
That's hoaxing.
Well, and again, when you deal with a group of researchers and a production company, there's contracts are signed. Now they're twisting your arm. Well, you're under contract. You see, that's why things have to be spelled out in the contracts very clearly. So this may be a case of, hey, you know what? We were told one thing and they did another. But if you don't have it on paper and signed, that's where it becomes very important for people that want the fame game to be very careful and get yourself an attorney to look over contracts, pay the extra money to have clauses put in the contract to make sure that everything stays on the up and up. I turned. I was told a long time. I was asked actually on one or two shows, different shows that I've done. Can you say this? And I would be, nope. I can't say that it's not accurate. And they would turn around and say, okay. And this is what a good director does, and a good production company does. Okay, so what would you say to make it accurate? Okay, and then I can turn it and change a few words to it to make it an accurate statement. And that's what you need to do. And I can't even recall what that actually was but I remember saying, no, I can't say that. That's not accurate. It's all about how you portray yourself. It's all about bringing out the truth. Because what happens is if you're bringing out a lie, that lie eventually will come back to bite you in the ass. And that is what we're dealing with tonight, is this case of Justin Smeja, where I believe, and I think you and Chris called it right on the head, Steve, that this was a cover-up because he had poached a couple of bears and there was rangers nearby. He couldn't transport them. He has to come up with a cover story. That way he can have some deniability to the whole thing. So
can't disagree.
And, again, sound travels. You take a couple of shots, especially in those mountains, sound travels. So the Rangers knew somebody popped off a couple of shots.
Yeah.
So they knew something was up.
So he comes up with a story, and if he gets caught, he could say, "Hey, man, it was walking on two legs. I thought it was a Bigfoot. I was afraid for my life."
I do got to say one thing before we end the show, and sure. I have nothing against Justin. I have nothing against Rose Sahibi. I have nothing against Sean, or Young, I think his last name is. I have nothing against those guys. They were doing something that they thought they were going to make a few bucks off of, and whatever. It's all in the past now. And they did give me some good things out of that whole Team Taser thing. They gave me a little bit of confidence to do, live shows and things like this.
Yeah.
Chris and my show, came from Team Taser. We started when we were in Taser. So, some good things happened from it, but those guys aren't around anymore. And
they're not your serial hoaxer types. They came in, they did their thing, and they left.
And at this point, I do believe it was a hoax. It took me a long time to come to that, because I was so devastated that the people I looked up to would do a thing like this.
So Frank asked the question: do we think that Justin shot a baby bear or also two adult bears?
I don't know.
Oh, we don't know. He could have shot one bear, as far as we know,
or nothing. We don't know.
Or nothing. Well, we know there's some blood and there's a piece of bear meat. So he shot a bear.
There was blood on his boots.
Right. So that's the one thing. He shot something at some point, whether or not I was on the day. But if and Darcy says I don't think he ever shot anything, but then the whole story wouldn't make sense why he carried it out. What was the motive? I mean, you say you shot a couple of Bigfoot. You're not making money off that. You're not getting notoriety. Maybe in his hunting circles, maybe he thought that would get him some notoriety in the hunting circles, because I know he likes doing the hunting circuit. And I actually caught a YouTube video of this big hunters convention or whatever. And hey, we have here Justin Smeja, and he's the guy who shot the 2 Bigfoot. And you know,
Really?
you see, so that could be part of it too.
Right.
So that would be the only thing, but it makes a lot of sense that the reason why he didn't take the Bigfoot in the first place, because there's rangers nearby, that made sense. We know the rangers went to his door. That made sense. So the whole idea is, I do believe that he probably capped a bear.
Yeah,
The evidence proves it. The motivations behind it.
the original post kind of confirms that. He said it was a funny looking bear. He never mentioned Bigfoot in the original post.
Right. You got it. So, yep. If you look at the original post, it all comes back to that. So, but I want to thank Steve for coming on tonight. I appreciate it so much. So we do have a way of getting around this technical glitch. And, so Steve, what are you guys talking about next week on the 40 and Slip, which is at 6 p.m. Eastern to 9 p.m. or to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sunday nights?
We are talking about a 40 and subject that will be revealed on Sunday night. We don't know. We usually don't know from week to week. They don't tell me because it looks better if I'm a bumbling buffoon.
Well, maybe they're afraid you're going to write a blog on it.
Expose them all.
Oh, well.
I do. I got to say one more thing. I do miss doing that. It's just that it got too much for me, and that's why I don't do it anymore.
We'll get back on the bicycle. Damn it! You need to do that.
I'll have to have a consultation with my lovely wife. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, I cut blogs when needed. I do this show every week, so that's enough.
Well,
but
you and I both know that the investigation behind these things takes a long time. It can take months, or years even.
He did both. He shot the baby and then he choked it to death because it was dying, which made no sense for a hunter to do. Gabby. So, and thank you so much, Darcy, despite all our technical difficulties in getting off the show a little bit late tonight. We always try to have some fun at the same time, get some people on once in a while. Sometimes we'll talk about news. Sometimes we have guests. That's what we're here for. But thanks for coming on, Mr. Alcorn. Appreciate it so much.
I appreciate the offer.
Chris, any final words for the evening before we kick off?
Again, I just like to thank Steve for coming on. He's a great guy, and enjoy talking with you. Always a pleasure. Please come back.
Yep.
Well, if Steve will have us back, we'll be back.
Oh, absolutely.
I also want to thank everybody, all the guests for coming in, and all the listeners for coming in and listening to it and bearing with us over the technical difficulties. Thank y'all. We appreciate you.
Amen. And folks, on behalf of me and everybody here at Squatch-D TV, we want to wish everybody a happy and safe week. God bless. Most of all, keep on squatching. Guys, we'll catch you all next week here on the various networks. 9 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night. We'll be back on February 23rd. February 23rd. There will be no show the last weekend of the month. I'll be out of town. So I'm doing a show, Rochester Parafest, with my good friends, Ted Vanson, who runs the organization. It's a benefit to benefit veterans and the charity there. I'll be seeing Mike from Tactical Bigfoot Research. I'll be seeing of course my paranormal team, Sherry Lynn will be there, and Michelle Wagner, the Saratoga Spiritualist, will be there. Scott Wagner, her husband, will be there. So we're going to have Jack Hanna will be there, and Curly. So we'll have a heck of a night or a heck of a weekend there. So we won't be doing a show the last weekend of the month. So anyway, again, everybody have a great week. We'll catch you all next week with more breaking news, and who knows what's coming next week. Catch you all in a little bit.
We got someone or something crawling around out here
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, the whole mind, this isn't a man.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it, that was in midair going across the road in front of me.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail. And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
There are thousands of perfect people whose word would be good on any other subject who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal. And that is a fact.